Hello, everybody. My goodness, these are a bit back to back today, aren't they? So I'm here again for International Women's Day, this time with the Blue Monkey, with Sam Munslow from Blue Monkey Coaching. Sam is one of my clients. She's awesome. She's a brilliant speaker. She's a coach. She works with corporates. She works with individuals. But one of the things we're talking about today is that Sam's been kind of doing a speaker tour focus. She's been working a lot with male-dominated industries, construction and the like, talking about male mental health. And today, for International Women's Day, she's going to talk a little bit about that, but also how that impacts women. It's so easy to go, but that's a man thing. No, it's not. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking. Sam, tell us everything we need to know.
Tell you everything. Well, I could talk for hours on this subject.
So we've got 20 minutes.
In a nutshell, I grew up in the 70s and I grew up with man up, grow a pair, and the really un-PC things of, don't be a sissy, don't be a puff, don't be a girl, all those lovely things I used to say to my brothers quite happily. When I cut myself, I would get a plaster. So I've got an older brother and a younger brother. So when I cut myself, I'd get a plaster. Poor Sammy. And a kiss, kiss on the boo-boo. When my brothers cut themselves, oh, don't be such a puff. Come on, it's hardly. If your leg's not falling off, it's fine. And that's what they grew up with. So they then suppressed their feelings because boys don't share their feelings. The impact of that then is that I also learned to suppress my feelings because I grew up in a man's world, as we did. If I want to play the man's game, if I want to be equal to men, I have to suppress my feelings too. So if we look at women in industry, women in any business, you're not allowed to have period pains. Well, we won't talk about those things. If you've got children who are ill, it was generally the woman that would stay at home, and it was such a trauma to be able to do that. And then, let's not talk about the menopause because we don't talk about the menopause, she says with a glowing face. So yeah, it affected me quite a lot as well. I noticed it, I recognized it, and made sure that it didn't have the same impact on my children. I've got one daughter and 3 sons, and my 3 sons have got more emotional awareness than me, absolutely, because that's how I've made sure that I bring them up, and they are massively supporting me through the menopause. So.
Well, if you missed it earlier, you might want to catch the chat that Kate Usher and I did. We talked a lot about menopause stuff there. But tell us more about this whole point around male mental health, because it's been in the news a lot, hasn't it? But you are a white cisgendered woman walking into predominantly masculine working environments, talking to them about mental health. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So it's the construction industry that I'm focusing on. There is a massive amount about construction, and now they're saying that there aren't 2 suicides a week at all. No, that's nonsense. It's only 9 in a month. Oh, sorry, not 2 suicides a day, 9 in a week. That's so much better. So I go in and I talk about my experience, my family, because my dad was a reefer and he didn't talk about his feelings and the impact on him when his mum died, the impact then on us, what we learnt, which was, we don't talk about Nana at all because Dad doesn't want to because it upsets him. So I never spoke about my Nana from the day that she died. We never had any photos. We had nothing. It was like she'd never existed. So I wasn't allowed to grieve. So that was the impact on the generation down from my dad. So I go on stage and I talk about this. And when I get off the stage, when I'm on stage, there's this arms folded in the orange kit. Mo, not listening to this. The messages I've had afterwards. Yeah, the messages I've had afterwards were there wasn't a single man not listening. It just hit a nerve. And the problem is they don't know how to share those feelings. So they fold their arms and they look disinterested. But when I get down off the stage, there's always a queue of men that go, have you got a minute? Can we just have a quick word? And the things they talk about then, because I give them permission to, in a way that they won't give themselves permission to, it's safe then to talk to me. They've talked about suicide, PTSD, relationship issues. So much has come out from that.
That's so important, isn't it? Because to bring this back to International Women's Day for a moment, or Women's Day, given the theme is embracing equity, for a long time now, women have been more encouraged, or at least felt more comfortable. Not always, but if we look at male versus female across the kind of old school gender spectrum, it's been accepted that women will talk about their emotions far more. So in order to create equity, true equity, you might say, well, we already have equality because men can talk about it if they want to. But if they don't have the tools, if they are not equipped, if they don't know how, then it might be equal. But it's certainly not. We're certainly not creating any equity, are we? So, what is the role of women in creating that space where men feel able to and safe to? Because surely all of these stats we're getting, these horrendous numbers of to do with male suicide, and that's without even talking about how many men are getting some other kind of support or help with their mental and emotional health. What's the role of women in building the equity to back up the perceived equality?
So what I've seen so far of the role of women is that in the construction industry, there are lots of mental health first aiders, and they tend to be the women in the office.
Oh God.
And so they go and do the training, and when I speak to them, they go, yeah, always here to listen if they want to. And when I speak to the men, they're not going to do that.
Of course they're not.
It doesn't fit in with them. So the role of women, they need to see that the way they deal with things is different to the way men deal with things. It's a bit like if I have a problem and I go to my dad, I've got a problem. There's one of two things he's going to say. Either, so love, what you need to do is, and he's going to fix it. Or, don't worry about that, because he doesn't know how to fix it. And so he'll dismiss it, which to me dismisses my feelings. And then, I'm making a fuss over nothing. If I go to my mum, I've got a problem. I'll put the kettle on, love. And she'll sit and listen. And recognizing that we have a different way of dealing with it is the first step. Absolutely. So the mental health first aiders, it would be great that it wasn't a woman's thing to do. It would be great to have more men getting involved in that for a start.
Even the fact that we're seeing that as the women's role, and I guess that's where your work with corporates comes in and with businesses comes in a lot more, doesn't it? Because the management teams need to not be saying, oh God, we've got to tick that box. Yeah. Leslie.
Yes. You're good at listening. She's really motherly.
Yeah.
We don't want the motherly one. And then for the men, so I work with road workers quite a bit. I speak to road workers. It's about giving them permission in a very, very different way. So there's the Mates in Mind, which is fantastic. There's the Ask Twice. But if I say to you, I could write it down on a bit of paper now. If I say to you, how are you, Taz? What are you going to say?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks.
Yeah, I'm all right. The standard one, either I'm all right or fine.
Fine.
If I ask you again, you've got, and you know this more than I do because you've taught me a lot of this in our coaching sessions, you've got that bit of pathway that says, oh, when you ask me that question, I'm going to access that answer. So it doesn't matter how many times I ask you how you are, you're just going to keep saying, fine. No, I'm fine. No, really, I'm fine. And you'll do your best to reassure me, and then you get annoyed at me. If I change the question, it changes the answer completely. So instead of saying, how are you? Fine. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you today? Where are you now? And if they say 4, it's not your job to say, oh, what's the matter, mate? Because that's the other thing, is they don't want to ask questions because they're fearful of not giving the right advice, not having the right answer, or hearing something that makes them feel uncomfortable. Yeah. So you don't need to know what's wrong with them. As a coach, I don't find out exactly what's going on for people. I don't always dig down. The thing that I need to know as a coach is what's needed to get you to the next step. Mm. So if I ask and say on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? And you tell me you're a 4, what's needed to get you to a 5? That's it. Yeah.
And what does a 5 look like? What is a 5 to you? Yeah. What would it be? Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? It's being brave enough to probe. I was sitting with a friend of mine not too long back, and it's a guy who's always described himself as being a real alpha male. And I knew that he'd been going through a tough time. He'd said as much as that. I popped around to see him not too long back. How are you then? And it's listening to that answer, isn't it? Because so often if you say, how are you then? even if you've gone past that barrier where we just say I'm all right or fine, if they start talking about things, so well, I've got that fixed and I've got this thing to do in the house and I've got some stuff to do there, but yeah, it's all coming together. Now, how are you feeling? How are you really? And I must have sat with him for about for a good couple of hours, and he just poured out, and there was some tears, there was some emotion, and it was just about sitting and holding space. There was nothing for me to actually do except create that space where there was a safe space for them to release a bit. And I don't think we do that very well either, do we? For a lot of the time, for the men in our lives, we don't know how.
Yeah, and it goes back to especially with the industries that I work with, engineers, construction, they're fixers. They want to fix, so they want to offer solutions, and quite often we don't need solutions. So the other thing to ask then is, how can I help? What's needed? What's needed from me? How can I help you? I used to have this. Took me years to learn this one. So my background is teaching. I was a deputy head, and I'd come home full of all of the worries of safeguarding lead, full of the worries of the children, and quite often, I'd go down and clean the chickens out. If I went and cleaned the chickens out, John knew, she needs to clear her head. I'd come back and he'd say, "You all right? Do you want to talk about it?" And so I'd talk about it because I wanted to get it out. I just wanted to get it out. And then he'd say, "Have you thought about? Have you considered? Do you think maybe you could?" And it just incensed me. You are not in education. What makes you think that you can give me the answers? What makes you think I've not tried those things? And I'd get really annoyed. And it took me a long time to realise that I just needed to prep him. So when he said, "You all right? You had a good day?" I'd say, "I'd like to talk, and I don't need anything back from you. I just need to listen. I just need you to listen. And if you want to ask any questions, but I don't need solutions." And when he just listened, it allowed me to say things out loud that I was just mulling around inside my head. And as those things came out, I heard them out loud for the first time. And quite often I'd go, "Oh, I know what I need to do." Or just saying them out loud helped me to just feel a little bit more at ease with it. That's often what's needed. But you just ask people what's needed, they'll tell you because they know.
See, it's interesting. So I would have answered that one differently, but purely because I guess it depends where somebody's at. Because if I ask another coach, because I coach a lot of coaches, as you know, if I ask another coach, "Well, what's needed?" They will frequently go, "Nothing," or "I don't know."
I don't know. I know. I hate it when you do that to me. I hate it. You do. And I know as soon as you say what's needed, if I say I don't know, I know your next thing that you're going to say. But if you did know, what would it be?
But what happens with that question?
Yeah. What happens? It makes you think. It makes you think beyond the problem, which is exactly what's needed.
Yeah. So that maybe that's something that we can. Would that work with some of the guys we want to be able to support if they're stuck in that? No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Yeah, I've asked that question and I had a flurry of abuse.
If I would have knew what it was, then I wouldn't be talking about it, would I?
Exactly. But then I explained the reason I'm asking you that is you're stuck in the problem. So let's just think beyond the problem. If you knew the solution, or if somebody else was stuck in that problem, what would be a great solution for them?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Well, when they have and then they can see it for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say if it was me? Or even what would you say if it was me going through it? What would you advise me to do? So many things that we can do there. So how's it been met, Sam, for you as a woman going into these male-dominated environments, talking to the men about their mental health? We talked about the folded arms at first, but how do you even get through the door in the first place to be accepted into that kind of work setup and come and talk to our hundreds of proper alpha males? How do you even get to that point?
How do I get to that point? That's a good question. Well, I got to that point because I was asked to speak at an event, and one of the managers, as I stepped down from the stage, said, "I need you for my team. I need that." And then that's cascaded. So every time I speak, somebody else says, "Can you do the same for my team as well?" Because they can see the benefit of it. Have I been accepted? and they're quite skeptical when I first walk in.
Yeah.
So the first time I walked in, I had my little dress on and my nice boots. I got some comments about that, so I don't wear them anymore.
I do overalls now.
I tone it down. I do wear my jacket simply because I want to wear blue, because that's my business. It's Blue Monkey.
Yeah.
So I wear my jacket, I wear a cool pair of trainers, and you can see the sidelong glances when I come in. But when I get up and start speaking, I wear a lapel mic. I don't stand behind a podium. So when it's usually a corporate day that I speak at, because it's health and safety. So that all their managers and senior leaders stand behind the podium, and they're holding on, and they talk to them, and they talk to the PowerPoint. I have a picture of my monkey behind me, and I move around, and I get them moving around, and they laugh and they joke and they wind each other up, and then they sit down. And I do say things that trigger them, but I don't labour the point, and I make sure I leave it lighthearted so that it's relatable. And then I'm just a person that's offering a different perspective. I think more than anything, they see that somebody's actually really listening. That's the thing more than anything.
It's an interesting point with the triggering, and Katie Allen and I were talking about this earlier, about the trigger. We've almost been conditioned, haven't we, to hate the trigger. You triggered me, stop triggering me, you can't mention this ever again, just in case it triggers me. Well, if we can, and everybody has exactly that voice, of course, but if we can get to the point where we see the trigger as kind of the gateway to solving whatever it is, or finding a way forwards, and it doesn't matter if it makes us angry or anxious or stressed. If we just try and cut it off there and go, no, not listening, that didn't make me feel good, I'm not going any further, then we're going to stay in that place of trigger. Whereas if we can start to see the trigger as, oh, that's interesting, oh, that's something I need to work on, where's that then, why am I feeling that, and go through it, then that opens us to the place of possibility.
Yeah.
So is it always the same trigger point, Sam, with these audiences you're working with at the moment, or are you intuitively working and just dropping out the this will open somebody up statement?
Well, I speak to the whoever it is that asked me to speak. I ask them, why are you asking me to speak? What's the main thing that you want me to address? And so I make sure I include that. So it does change ever so slightly.
Yeah.
There was one where they had just experienced suicide. A member of their team had just committed suicide. Wow. So I was really cautious about mentioning that, but I did raise it.
Yeah.
I touched on it, and then I moved on.
Yeah.
And that was the bit that people spoke to me about afterwards. There are other times where they say that, it's anger that's the big thing, because the people, the passers-by are very rude to road workers. The road users are not polite to them, which I've learned a huge amount about that. And so it's either anger because they can't respond, or it's frustration. So it depends on what it is that I've been asked to come and speak about, and as to what I tend to touch on.
So how do you help a bunch of guys who are working on the roads and who are getting abuse hurled at them by people who are annoyed that they can't get through because brackets they've not left enough extra time? What do you say to get them to a point where they can deal with that anger? Because that's not to be dismissive, but surely that's got to kind of be part of the job. Doesn't mean it should be there or that it's right for them to experience that, but how can they ever get beyond that when that's got to be a daily occurrence?
It all goes back to the beginning of swallowing emotions and what we grew up with. And once they recognize that that's them, because you see, when I start talking about, if you grew up in the 70s and you were told this and you swallowed your feelings, I can see this ripple of nods as they're going, oh, yeah, that's me. And then we just move on to which are the feelings that are okay to share and which ones aren't. And anger apparently isn't an okay feeling to share. That's another one you have to swallow. So not only can you not be emotional as in cry at films, but it's not acceptable to be angry either, because you get your colleagues saying, calm down, it's not worth it. Just like my dad, would dismiss my feelings at times.
Yeah.
Not intentionally, but, it's healthier that way. Oh, they do that all the time. Don't worry about that. And it makes you feel like, well, I have no reason to be angry, especially the younger generation. and that's they're struggling with keeping the younger generation in with the retention, because they don't feel that they fit, because the younger generation will share their feelings. So it's getting them to see that if you're angry, what kind of things can you do? And again, it's down to somebody saying, you look a bit angry there, mate. What's needed? Do you need 5 minutes? Do you want to talk about it? Rather than, oh, you look a bit angry. Don't let them wind you up, which makes them squish it all back down again and hold that negative energy inside. Yeah. And then go home and drink too much or lose their temper with their family.
It just makes it worse and worse and worse.
It's about permission. It's about permission, really, to share emotions.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point from Asha, though. We hardly see anything in the media about this. Well, we see statistics, but we don't see anything beyond the statistics, do we?
No, that's a good point. Actually, that might be something that I look into to do.
Yeah, maybe that's a little challenge for you there, Sam.
I think that's
so. Presumably, it's not just a case of going in, triggering them, talking to them afterwards, and then leaving. You do ongoing work with a lot of these organisations, don't you, to support the teams?
I do, yes, and I start more or less at the top. So I start with the managers and the senior leadership team, because they are very aware of what's going on for their road workers, and they really want to support them. And in doing their very best to support them, they're not supporting themselves. Yeah. So they're not modelling self-care. They're not modelling sharing emotions, being vulnerable. That's a massive one in a male-dominated industry. Yeah. I had one manager who sat down in front of his team, and he said, and it was relating to an incident that happened, and he said, I'm really upset by this. I'm really, really upset. In fact, I didn't want to come to work today. I've come in because I know that you've got me. And he shared how he felt with his team. And this is, the blokes in the orange kit, the road gang, covered in tattoos, burly blokes, don't talk about the feelings. And their manager had tears in his eyes, and he shared how he felt. Took a while to get the manager to that point, because he believed that he had to be the positive, he had to hold them up. But being real and being vulnerable is so much more powerful.
Yeah.
And teaching them how to look after themselves means that they model it to their teams.
Sam, I could talk to you about this all day. If we weren't on such a tight schedule, we should maybe do this again some other time and just dig down a little bit deeper. So for anyone, I mean, you don't work just with construction workers. I know you do one-to-one coaching and business leadership coaching. You do all, and you also do kind of a emotional support and mental health support for all kinds of organisations, don't you? Yeah. Right from an initial kind of wellbeing survey to find out what's needed all the way through. For organisations who recognise that there is a need for something more than just a mental health first aider, how can they best get in touch with you, and how can they find out more about what it is that you do?
The best way is LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm currently revamping my website, which is 4 years out of date. So LinkedIn would be better, really.
Should have amended that URL and put LinkedIn on there. But do a search for Sam on LinkedIn. And for individuals who want coaching, you don't work just with men, do you, Sam?
No. I work with lots of people. I've got a teenager that I'm working with, a lady in the 30s, a female manager who was stuck in operational because she didn't believe she was good enough. Whole host of people. And I've just released a course for busy people to claim their life back as well.
Oh, fantastic. Is that an online course or an in-person course? Or
it's an online one. Yeah.
Okay. And where can people find out details about that?
Again, just get in touch with me. Find me on LinkedIn. Actually, if you Google, I do eventually come up and you can find me.
Our web address is at the bottom of the screen. So if you could just accept that it's a bit out of date, you can get her there too, presumably.
Get me there. Yeah.
Okay. Sam Munslow, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you're out there and doing this work. It's so refreshing to hear of a woman putting herself into that place where you can start to create equity for our male allies, and being such a brilliant ally yourself. So thank you.
No, thank you.
Please keep talking. And Sam is awesome at all that she does. Cracking coach too. So if you need some support, which way am I pointing? That way. It's weird, isn't it? I just pointed at my fridge. She's there. Get in touch. Sam, thank you. Happy International Women's Day. International Women's Day.
Been a long day, has it?
It has, and it's not finished yet. See you soon, my love. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.